It's Robbie. Again. So, Thursday. I made a decision Wednesday night sitting on my couch in my black dress. The decision was simple. Professional distance, reset. Whatever had been happening, whatever that thing was that had been building quietly and persistently since the moment Lara moved her coffee 2 inches to the left, it was going to stop. I was going to walk into that office on Thursday morning, and I was going to be a colleague, a competitor, a professional person focused on a campaign and a promotion and absolutely nothing else. I had made this decision before. It had lasted until 10:30. This time was going to be different. I arrived at exactly 7:30. Not 6:55, not 7:15, 7:30. The time I had always arrived before any of this started. The time of a person who was completely fine and had no reason to come in early. 7:30. Lara was already there. Of course she was. Different outfit today. Dark gray fitted blazer, white shirt underneath, hair pulled back the way she wore it at the office before Wednesday night reminded me it could be down. She was on her laptop, coffee beside her, completely absorbed. She looked up when I came in. She said, "Morning." I said, "Morning." We looked at each other for exactly 1 second. Then we both looked at our screens, and I thought, okay, good, this is fine. This is exactly what professional distance looks like, and we are both doing it, and it is fine. It was fine for approximately 40 minutes. The presentation was in 3 days. Marcus had made that very clear in an email sent at 7 a.m. that morning. 7 a.m., which meant he had been thinking about it before most people were awake. And the email was polite and professional, and underneath the politeness, it said, "Finish this, or neither of you gets the promotion." We needed to finalize the visual deck, the narrative arc, the data presentation, the brand voice document, all of it, together. Professional distance was going to have to wait. I pulled my chair slightly closer to the shared screen. She pulled hers slightly closer. We started working. Here's the thing I was not prepared for. We were good at this. Not just good at our individual parts. Good together, like the campaign itself worked better when we were both in it. Both pushing, both pulling in the same direction. She'd identify a problem, and I'd already have the solution forming. I'd hit a wall, and she'd dismantle it in 1 sentence. 40 minutes of professional distance dissolved in about 12 minutes of actual work. By 9:30, we were deep in the presentation structure, and I had completely forgotten to maintain the careful, emotional architecture I had spent Wednesday night constructing. She said, "The opening slide is wrong." I said, "I know." She said, "It needs to lead with the feeling, not the data." I said, "I know. I've been trying to figure out how to say that to Marcus for a week." She looked at me. I looked at her. She said, "Then say it." I said, "He's going to push back." She said, "He'll push back less if we say it together." I looked at her for a moment. Something about that, the "we," landed somewhere it had no business landing. I looked back at my screen. She looked back at hers. It happened at 11:15. We were both standing over the desk looking at a printed layout. She'd spread the slides out across the surface to see the visual flow, which was actually smart, which I was not going to tell her. And I reached for one of the slides at the same time she did. Our hands didn't touch. They came close. Close enough that I felt the air between them. Neither of us moved for a second. Just that. Just the almost. Then she picked up the slide and said, completely normally, completely professionally, "This one needs to move to the end." And I said, "Agreed." And we both stepped back slightly and looked at the layout and talked about the presentation structure, and I did not acknowledge what had just happened, and neither did she. But my heart was doing something unreasonable, and I was fairly certain she knew. At 12:30, she said something about the brand language that was genuinely funny. Not a joke. Lara did not make jokes. She made observations that occasionally had the effect of jokes, but something dry and precise and slightly absurd about the Hale brand's insistence on the word curated. I laughed. She looked at me when I laughed, and then she smiled. Not the almost smile, not the corner of the mouth thing I had been cataloging for 2 weeks. An actual smile, small and real and directed at me specifically. And I realized, in the specific way you realize things you wish you hadn't, that I had said the thing I said specifically because I thought she would find it funny. That I had been calibrating what I said to her reactions for longer than I wanted to examine. That somewhere between Monday and Thursday, I had started making choices about what I said out loud, based on what would make Lara Varela smile. That realization sat down in my chest next to everything else that had been accumulating there. And I felt it, and it frightened me. I went cold, not dramatically, not obviously. I didn't say anything sharp or pull away visibly. I just dialed back, became more precise, more professional, answered questions with answers instead of conversation, stopped leaving space for the small moments that had been appearing between the work. She noticed within about 4 minutes. I know she noticed because I watched it happen, watched her recalibrate in real time. The slight adjustment in her posture, the expression closing a fraction, the way she started addressing questions to the screen instead of to me, like she was following a lead I had set. We finished the afternoon in the language of colleagues. Professional, correct, efficient, everything the professional distance decision had intended. It felt terrible. At 5:45, I said I was going to head out. She said, "I'll finish the data section tonight. Have it by morning." I said, "You don't have to do that tonight." She said, "It's fine." She was already looking at her screen. I picked up my bag. I said, "See you tomorrow." She said, "See you tomorrow." I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button. I stood there while the numbers counted down, and I thought about a smile directed at me specifically, and a hand that almost touched mine, and we said it together like it was the most natural thing in the world. The elevator arrived. I stepped in. The doors closed. I stood there for exactly 3 seconds. Then I took out my phone and called Maya. She picked up on the second ring. Before she could say anything, I said, "You were right." I hung up. The lobby was quiet. I walked through it, past the reception desk, past the glass doors, out onto the street where the evening was doing that Thursday thing of feeling like Friday was almost there, but not quite. I stood on the pavement outside the building. I thought about Lara upstairs finishing the data section tonight because it's fine, in an office that was going to be empty, except for her, at a desk where 2 coffee cups had sat side by side like they belonged there. I thought about a smile. I thought about we. I thought about the space between 2 hands that didn't touch. I went back inside. I took the elevator back up. I stood outside the office door. 10 seconds. Just stood there. Then I pushed it open. She was still there, standing at the desk, packing up her things, laptop, notebook, 1 pen, phone. In that order, the way she always did. She looked up when the door opened. She looked at me. I looked at her, and I said, "Lara, we need to talk."